Hey everybody! In this month's gel press video, I'm going to show you how to sort of float alcohol ink on top of your prints. Alcohol ink is one of my favorite things to use on the gel press, and you can actually create quite a few different textures with alcohol ink. It doesn't just have to be a finishing treatment, which I also have a video on. And it doesn't have to be kind of the classic alcohol ink. It can be anything that you feel like drawing onto your plate and then finishing the back with paint so that the alcohol is sort of floating on top of your print. I find that the transparency of alcohol ink combined with opaque acrylic paints is really super fun. You can even layer alcohol inks like this, where I'm just putting green ink inside some sort of yellowish gold ink droplets on the plate. And you can experiment with different levels of dryness of your alcohol ink, or if you want to get sort of dendritic lifting effects, you can actually pull your print while the alcohol ink is wet. So you have a lot of options when it comes to alcohol ink, and one of the things that people tend to think is that you can't use alcohol ink on the gel press. So I'm here to dispel that myth. Now I have a little hand dryer that I like to sort of speed up the process with alcohol ink. It just is like a mechanical little blower, and you can save some of the details of the alcohol ink by drying them partially. Some of them are still wet, so those will look different than the ones that I've dried. I actually use the tip of the alcohol ink bottle, as you can see here, as sort of a drawing tool. And you can see by what comes through the paper what is dry and what is still wet. So I even will sort of kind of blot it if I get too much. I find if you tip a little bit of the ink out of the container, you can stop that sort of spraying that happens with alcohol inks when you go to apply it to your plate. So just turn the bottle upside down and get that little air bubble out like you saw me do, and that helps a lot. Now, if you want to just brayer the droplets of ink, then you can get a really super subtle pattern that I ended up liking really the most. So I just sprayered the wet ink, and then I'm going to put some acrylic paint on it after drying it with my little hand dryer. I love this elephant ink. It's a beautiful neutral, so especially if you're using some really vivid alcohol inks, this is a really fun backdrop color to use. I love all things gray, so I think the alcohol ink works especially well against buff titanium, this elephant color, and of course white. I think the neutrals really make the alcohol ink shine. And you can see those dots are preserved. The ones that are dry, the ones that I brayered over have a little more motion to them. And you can see all of the different colors of alcohol ink. That yellow almost looks like rust on there. It looks so great. It's hard for me not to incorporate yellow into everything. So here I am just manipulating larger puddles of alcohol ink with my little shaper tool. This will give me some fun sort of abstract washes of color, similar to a watercolor look, except you're using alcohol ink, and that's one of my favorite ways to use the ink. Once the yellow layer is dry, I will go back and do the same thing with another color. This can really give you an overall watercolor feel. If you wanted to just preserve this without adding color, you could always pick this up with a gel medium. So if you wanted to preserve that transparency, but have a little bit more control over the alcohol ink by using a paintbrush or a shaper tool, then this is a good way to do that. So I'm just using a couple of different colors of green. I wanted this to be sort of an organic floating top to my print. So I'm just applying those all over. It'll really have color over most of the print. I'm using my 5x7 gel press. That's my favorite size for card making because I can for sure get one full card front, but I can also get two smaller card fronts. Now, once again, I will use the elephant paint, and I got a little bit too much here, so I just am squeezing it back up into the bottle by creating a little air space and then sucking that back up. This is something I've gotten really good at because I tend to use too much paint all the time. So this is my little handy tip. I also will sometimes just get some of that on my brayer and just have an art journal nearby when I am printing so that I can take advantage of all those pretty colors that I'm using. And this gray is an especially good base for an art journal page because you can literally do anything on top of it and that color won't interfere. So I will cover the plate. The great thing about alcohol ink is it dries fast, but it also isn't harmed by me taking that extra time to pick up that paint because it's just dry and it's going to stay dry until I pick it up with paint. So I will make sure that I get good contact all over there. This should be a really fun wash look. Ooh, I love that. It looks like a map of the world. That's really fun. So that's it's the same colors, but it's two really different looks. One of them is very abstract. One of them you can definitely see the circles on. That is lots of fun. Another cool thing about alcohol ink is your plate is always super clean after you pull your print. So that's the beauty of the gel press, is it's releasing all that media super cleanly with this particular combo. So same colors again. This time I'm not doing the watercolor wash. I'm doing more kind of sketchy lines in the alcohol ink for the floating foreground. And you can use any number of tools to do this. You could use little sponges if you wanted a more organic texture. This is kind of a stormy look to me. And then you can paint really, really carefully with a paintbrush and alcohol ink onto your gel press. So if you wanted a more sort of intentional picture look, then you can definitely get that. Now this time I'm going to use purple, so that'll be complementary to my green that I'm using, and it's going to give me some fun mixes with almost an orange look on that print. And this is a little bit more of a transparent color, so it's going to give me sort of a staticky look, which I really like. And it turns out that I found a perfect match for this purple in an ink that I have, which will come in handy later, as you will see. So see where the green turned into like that orange? That is such an interesting part of printing with alcohol inks because they are mixing on the plate and creating all those colors. Love that grungy, staticky look with the little voids in the paint. So see what I mean about how it sort of sprays out when you first tip it over? Just tip that over onto a piece of paper before you get started if you're doing anything more precise than what I'm doing here. So here I will just move this around. This really has two functions. It's going to make sure that I don't have big puddles that won't dry before I pick it up with my second layer. And I also want to create sort of a floral shape. This is a very small little shaper, so I can create sort of little branches or petals with it after I've mixed the ink up because I'm trying to create sort of an underwater background. So this is going to look like plants under the water, and it'll be perfect for like a mermaid card or something like that. I like these long, spiny little streaks that you can get with the color shaper. So I'm simultaneously doing hand exercises and drawing my plate. So this counts as a workout if you're keeping track. And then I will add just some yellow paint. Actually, I think this might be orange. I can't remember which one I used, but it's one of the Dina Wagley. I think it is orange. So I'm going to pick that up. That should be really interesting with the colors that I put down in the foreground. So we will see what that looks like. My plate is so well loved at this point. So that has a nice warm background, but fun little plant-like, leaf-like shapes in the foreground from the color shaper. So now I want to do that same thing, but have a cooler background because I envisioned this as more of a watery type print, but I couldn't resist that warm color. So we'll do it again, but we'll do it with a cooler color in the background. That one to me looks like a fall composition. Very fun. So we will get those same colors going on the bottom. Now I do like to leave my gel press on a piece of paper. That's how I store it, just copy paper. And that makes it super easy to tape it down to my work surface while I'm working. As you can see here, I have some frog tape holding it down, and that just keeps it from slipping while I'm printing. So you get kind of a 2-for-1. I get the storage, and the storage helps me secure it to my workspace while I am printing or filming. So I'm recreating those little spiny leaves or petals with the same colors. I'm just using a yellow and a green and a blue, the same ones that I used in that first kind of dotty print and a few after that. And I'm going to try to make this a more oceany theme for my Little Mermaid concept. Now I will go in with a beautiful aqua paint for the lift part, and I think that this will be more of the look that I was going for in terms of water. Now my little brayer sheet is fun with those little spots. That was where I lifted up the extra alcohol ink on the first one. And now that it has a little paint on it, that'll be cute in a journal page. I usually just cut a piece of copy paper in half to print on this size plate. So it's a 5.5 by 8.5. You can cut it to 5 by 7, but that's just less time you'll spend printing. So I don't do that. Now you can see what I mean about it being an underwater theme that really looks like what I envisioned, with little maybe kelp floating in the background. Very fun watery look. So here's what some of these look like close up. These are the finished prints, and I'm going to be collaging 2 of these together. But I just love the floating alcohol ink look, and I hope you give it a try. Thanks so much for watching.